You're listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast, celebrating hunting dog heritage, competition, and community. United Kennel Club has been the hunting dog sports home for coonhounds, beagles, retrievers, pointers, cur, feist, and more for over 125 years.
So you just got Winston back from down in Tennessee, right? Have you got to squirrel hunt any this spring or summer yet?
Not much. I took him out a time or two, but not as much as I'd like to. Gosh, he's always raring to go, but I just don't get to get him out as much as I'd like to.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite times of the year to hunt, and in Michigan's a little different than Tennessee with the quiet season. Obviously on public land is shut down completely, but I don't have a lot of private land to hunt on right now, so it's not a lot of hunting going on my end either.
Yeah, our target date up here in Michigan is July 8th. I always remember that.
That's right. I got it saved on my calendar. When I wake up that morning, I may have to call out and just go hunting.
Yeah. Last year, it was July 9th. I took a day off work, and I headed for the UP, took my rabbit dogs up there on the first day, or actually the second day, I guess, but yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. I'll be your host today, Trevor Wade. I'm the Coonhound Program Manager here, and I'm joined by the Director of the Hunting Ops, Alan Gingrich. Thanks for being here, Alan.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to start out discussing a couple of youth programs that you're probably really familiar with, because I think you had a big hand in implementing a few of these and have seen them grow and work in different ways. But the one that's fresh on my mind right now is the Next Generation Spotlight Series. And this is a series that's sponsored by Bright Eyes Lights. They're a big part of all of our youth programs here. A big sponsor of ours on those events, and they really help out with the youth. The Spotlight Series, it just ran from June 1st to May 31st of this year, so it's fresh on our minds. The Spotlight Series. Were you here when it was first started, that series?
Yeah, I was, and we I don't remember all the details of it, and I'm going to say it's probably longer than I think it has been, but I'm going to say it's a good 6 to 7, 8 years already that it's been running. But the idea was to try to, every state has a state championship, and we wanted to have some events where you could double up on points. Kids could double up on the points they earn, and we thought the best way to do that was do it at the state championships where everybody has equal opportunity, in their state and also in surrounding states, et cetera.
Right. Yeah. So, and this year's just concluded, and we actually had a really good race this year. It seemed like a lot of youth were participating. But before we get into that, let's talk about some particulars of the series. Like I said, it runs from June 1 to May 31st of next year. That kind of gives us a chance before Youth Nationals to get the winners in place so we can award them there. And any youth from 5 to 17 can compete on it. Can compete in youth events across the country to accrue points towards this series. Basically, in the Spotlight Series, we have two different divisions. There's a junior division, which is 5 to 12 years old, and the senior division, which is 13 to 17. One kind of important particular is for those that are in the middle there. If you were to turn 13 before the running year's over, which if you got to turn 13 before May 31st of that year, then you would all your points would go towards the senior division. And also for someone turning 18, any points you get before you turn 18 will count towards the standing. So you have a chance to accrue some points, but won't be able to compete in any more events after you turn 18. So just a couple particulars to get out of the way before we get there. So you talked about the state championships a little bit, but at every youth event, you can actually get Spotlight Series points, right? Any YEP event across the country. And the way the points are laid out is you get 10 points per cast win. Don't have to be any sort of special placement. You just get 10 points per cast win in the hunts, and also 10 points per category winner in the shows. So that's your grand champion male and female, champion male and female, and then your best male and best female a show.
Yeah, six categories at every show.
6 category winners at every show for them to get points on, but no points are going to be awarded for class or breed winners in the registered portion of the show. Just have to be one of the 6 category winners. Another important thing to detail is that a youth may only be credited with Spotlight Series for 2 category wins in the show. So they're limited to that. That's kind of a new, I believe that happened in 2019. You implemented that.
Yeah, and what we were seeing, the reason we did that is what we were seeing, there's some kids that were privy to handling a bunch of dogs, a lot more dogs than other kids, and wasn't a fair competition. One kid going to an event with 5 or 6 dogs, especially in the show portion of it, and kids only handling 1 or 2 dogs could never compete with that. So that's why we maxed it out at 2 dogs maximum.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes you see youth that only have 1 dog available to them. one that they've worked with.
Now, just to be clear, though, a youth can handle as many dogs as they want to, but they'll only get credit for 2 dogs that day at one show.
And you'll still see some of the folks that are pretty intent on running this. They'll set themselves up best they can, and they'll win 3 or 4 categories, but they're still only going to get credit for the 2 categories, or per the rules. And then also, like you talked about with the youth state championships, where there's double points events, and at those events you can double up on those points. I guess the reason behind that, you're trying to drive people to participate in those state youth championships.
It is, and I think it's worked pretty well, really, and try to get them there, and with those double points, and it's just it gets more kids from out of state to come to their joining states state championship, and you'd be surprised how far some of these kids drive just to go compete. I know at one time we said, really is the amount of events that we have for a kid that really wants to, especially those that live in the Midwest. They can go to find a youth event about anywhere, about any weekend of the year to go to if they want to.
Yeah, and you'd kind of be surprised by how many state championships there are. I believe there's close to 25 state youth championships in the year. So even kids in the Northeast, the West, they have opportunities in their states to accrue some points.
Absolutely,
too.
Yeah, yep.
Right. And then the last double points event, of course, is Youth Nationals. You get a cash win there or win your age there, because the show's a little bit different. We'll talk about that later on, but that's a double points event too for folks to.
Yeah.
And that excludes both the Breed Association championships that they have and the YEP events. It's only for state level events, and for Youth Nationals is the double points events.
State championships.
That's right. So, one kind of new thing for the Spotlight Series this year is going to be what we call the Junior Handler Enrollment Form. This is a kind of a new way for us to keep track of points, and I think it's going to work out really well for us. Right now, we're keeping track of these points by hand in an Excel spreadsheet. Leaves room for human error. Putting it in a system is going to make it a lot more streamlined process, more efficient. It's going to be easier on the folks that are processing those reports, don't you think?
Yeah, really, we've asked too much of the ladies that do that, and they've done an excellent job with it. But humans doing that, this new system will just remove more human error.
And you've kind of tested this a little bit, right, with your Beagle Gun Dog Youth Series. You're kind of working on this way already, right?
Yeah, and it's working really good. So we need to do this.
Right. So once we get these enrollment forms filled out, we get them put into our system, and we're going to assign each kid a number and mail them out a card with their number on there. So they'll be able to enter the youth events with their number and have that number in our system to effectively track these points. But one thing to note is that if we don't have a formal file or put you in our system, there's no way for us to apply those points. So it's imperative that we get those forms filled out and in.
Yeah, it is. And the number that we give each kid is pretty unique, and you may have it here to discuss that, but it's very simple. It's the year the kid was born is going to be the first 4 numbers, followed by the month. The kid was born in May, it's going to be 05 is going to be the next 2 numbers, and then followed by the 2-digit number of their birth date in that month, and then -001, unless there's a kid that already has another kid in the system that has that same exact birthday, then the next kid becomes 002, and so on, just to keep them separated. Right. So the number is kind of matches their birth date.
Right. And one thing to note is that once you fill it out once, you don't have to do it again. So it's a one-time thing.
And not just that, but the other thing, it gives us a little bit of a bio for the kid, for the youth handler. And if we ever needed to contact them or this or that, it's another way for us to go to their record, their personal record, and be able to get all the information we need.
Yeah. And I think in the preliminary talks about this program, when we're talking about what the handler enrollment form should look like, having a little information about the kid and being able to spotlight some of the kids that are running these races and competing in a lot of events is not a bad thing. We could highlight them on our social media platforms or websites or different things once we collect some information about them to put out there for them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of paperwork, though, each club will be getting what we call a Spotlight Series form, where the event official, when they're doing their report, is also going to fill out the information with the handler's youth number and what they won that day. That way we can give the youth the correct amount of points. Mm-hmm. And that's very important for you to take your time, get those filled out correctly, because that is what we're going to be tracking as far as data and getting points applied correctly. And talking about points and standings, we do a pretty good job, I think, of keeping up with publishing and keeping everybody in the know as far as what the standings are. We post monthly on our website, ukcdogs.com, what the standings are at that time in each division and each event. And also it's going to be in Coonhound Bloodlines every month on what it's going to be. And as far as this year's, I said it just ended at the time we're recording this just recently, but we actually have not even finalized this year's Spotlight Series points yet. It's that fresh, so we're still waiting on, I think, 3 or 4 reports to come in to finalize that. But right now we have a couple really good races, and just to get the youth, sometimes you see these and you think, man, I can't run that, but just to get it out there in the night hunt. Right now the leader has 80 points. That could change. But 80 points it's a really attainable goal for someone, especially if you go to a couple state championships and with a double points events, you can rack up 80 points in no time.
Yeah. Since we've had this, we've had a lot of good races like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It makes it's really interesting.
Right.
It motivates kids, and it's a good thing. It's just been, and it's so much fun. You come to the Youth Nationals and you're going to talk about that here in a minute, where we do the awards, all those kids that got in for their division. It's just awesome.
It's the funnest part about
it.
That sticking around that night or coming in the next day and they're walking around with their chest puffed out and talking about their hunt last night.
Yeah.
It's some of the better times out there. But
good stuff.
There is right now. There is one division that is pretty always competitive since I started being here, and that's the senior division of the bench show. And some of those folks are gaining a lot of points this year. We have two young ladies. Both live in the middle part of the country, and they both have over 500 points right now.
Wow.
And that's a lot of category wins.
Yeah.
They've traveled, I know, all over the country to accrue these wins, and it's going to be pretty tight.
You know what amazes me? Since we've started these programs, we've had them for a good little while, but I think it has really, really helped the handling skills, develop the handling skills, and move them along quicker than it did in the old days.
Yeah.
You see some of these young kids, it is amazing what you see with their handling skills. It's crazy.
We've talked about it. When I first started here in 2019, seeing some of the kids handling there at that event compared to this year, there's no comparison. They're just gaining confidence. They're getting better. They're learning different things. And now you're seeing these kids that were competing at Youth Nationals in 2019, and they're at Autumn Oaks, Winter Classic, some of our major
competing
shows,
competing with the adults.
Right.
Absolutely.
And they're winning.
Yeah.
they're very competitive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, talking about the youth that are competing, I got a couple numbers from just this year's series, and 269 different youth accrued points in the bench show series this year, and 235 different youth accrued points in the night hunt series. So that's just cast winners and category winners. Mm-hmm. That's quite a few youth that are involved. So sometimes I think people have a bleak outlook on the future, but that speaks well to the power of the programs and getting kids out and involved.
It does. And I always said it every year you go to the Youth Nationals. Man, it's just a good example of, hey, the sport is pretty vibrant with youth, with young kids competing in it.
That's right. And the thing about Youth Nationals is it's a little regional. It moves around from area to area. We've had it since I've been here in Indiana. We've had it all the way as far west as Oklahoma and all the way as far east as West Virginia. And there's always a different crowd, different group of kids. And there's just a lot of youth involved. But out of these numbers I just told you, 270 in the show and 235 in the hunt, that's 31 different states are represented in our standings, plus Canada.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's just awesome.
Absolutely. And then once we get these final standings, which should be within the next little bit, that'll be announced well in advance of Youth Nationals. That way those folks can make arrangements to be there and get awarded at Youth Nationals, because that's where we're going to award them Saturday at Youth Nationals in front of their peers. Make them feel important. It's a huge accomplishment, and it will put them up on a pedestal for everybody to see, and hopefully have some folks in the crowd that are shooting for them, gunning for them in this next year's series.
Yeah.
But
and that's always a good time. Seeing those kids up there, all the big smiles and everything. I've done a bunch of those, and it's loved it.
Yeah, well, that's something to be proud of for sure.
Yeah, and some of these kids that started this, some of our first winners, they're young adults now. I can still remember some of those kids that were that came up through this program. The other thing that we see a lot, you're talking about Youth Nationals here a little bit, is what is I find so unique and interesting is the fact that some of these kids are now parents, and they're bringing their kids who are not just, they're there competing.
That's right.
That's pretty neat.
That's
pretty
right.
neat.
I've made it a point to kind of go through some of the old records and magazines of the past Youth Nationals since it started in 2001.
2001.
And boy, that's you're looking at a lot of winners that are now have major impact on our sports. They're winning major events. Some of our judges are judging major events already. It's that program does a good job, I think, of what it's intended to do is to draw people to the sport and keep them in the sport, keep them involved.
Just some names. We could throw some names out there. You might be surprised, but just like we had our Tournament of Champions here a couple of weeks ago, and, guys like Nick Brady was in the finals. He was one of the first winners, or placed high in one of the first ones. Another one was the not Dual Murphy, but the other boy, his partner there.
Nick Immel?
Immel.
Yeah.
Nick Immel.
Yeah.
He's won it before.
Oh.
So guys like that, they all came up through the youth programs.
Yeah. And on the show side, I think the first, if I'm not mistaken, one of the first ones was Melinda Hicks, and she's still winning. She won the top 10 bench show a couple years ago. I saw
judging shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Having major impact on our sports still to this day. So shifting a little bit from the Spotlight Series into what is actually the importance inside of it is our YEP program, the Youth Education Program. Is that a program that you also were here when it was implemented, or was that before you were here?
No, that was after I've been here, and that's YEP, which stands for Youth Education Program, and just another big deal. We started that one out a little differently than what it is now. We had to make some changes. It was a little too aggressive to begin with. I think the idea was great, but it was just too aggressive and too hard for clubs to administer. But we started with the kid had to do 3 classes before they could actually compete, and they had to do the club had to do some kind of educational course for them. But one of the part that I really loved in there, that after we just did one course, dropped it from 3 to 1, was during that a kid had to introduce a buddy or a friend to the sport in some manner. Didn't matter. It could be a lot of different things. They could bring a school buddy to a club meeting, a coon club meeting, or take them hunting just during the week with their dad or whatever. Take them on a hunting trip with them,
Yeah.
Or anything coonhound related or sport related. And the idea wasn't necessarily to bring them into the sport. It's great if they do, if they find it interesting and they like and they want to do it. That's fine. But the other thing is when they become adults, they buy a house on the edge of a woods, wake up at 2:00 in the morning, they hear a dog barking out back that's treed. Now they know exactly what that dog's doing. They're not concerned about it. They know everything about it.
They've been exposed. They've been informed.
And opposed to, freaking out, not knowing what this dog is doing out back here. There's, don't know what's going on. I love that part of it. But so we had moved it from 3 classes down to just 1, which works so much better, and that's enough. But
before the YEP program was created, were there youth events outside of state youth championships before then?
Yeah, we had some. There was, all the breed associations had a youth breed hunt, just for youth only. So it started out kind of with limited events, but it has really grown. It's grown tremendously.
Right. I know you talked about it a few years back, being up in the 200s. I think this year we had around 120 youth-only events. And I just wanted to give a kind of a shout-out to some of our top-performing states as far as putting on different youth events.
Yeah.
Indiana was the top state this past season, which I'm talking about from January 1, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. Ohio had 11. Kentucky was next with 9. North Carolina had 9 as well. And then West Virginia was there with 8. So I wanted to give a shout out and props to those clubs and those states that are putting the effort in to keep the kids first and getting them involved.
Absolutely.
I was kind of surprised about it, Alan, to be honest with you. Some of the states that weren't having very many youth events, and I had to double check our records to make sure it's right. There's a few states in here that are kind of low with just having the one state youth championships a year and no YEP events at all. And I don't have a good reason why a club couldn't put on a youth event. For us,
I can make a good argument for that. For local clubs to put on a YEP event, we don't charge them a license fee or a recording fee. It is absolutely free to the club as far as UKC fees go. So that shouldn't hold anybody back. So there's really, as far as costing them anything, it's nothing but time. But I'm telling you, it's time well spent when you look at the future of the sport. That's for sure.
That's right. If you're worried about maybe your club declining with numbers, you haven't tried new things, maybe getting in touch with us and getting one of your events to be a YEP event is a direction your club could go to draw some new people to your club. Once you get them there, put on a good event, you're liable to get them and their parents there.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And you mentioned some of the states here in the Midwest that have done very well, and kudos to them for sure. But there's also some of those clubs out west, or states out west. Oklahoma has always been good for their Arkansas. Even Texas and some of those states have just always had awesome kids programs out that way.
Yeah.
And then some of the breed associations as well.
Yeah. And speaking of that a little bit, I know that 2021 numbers may not be the most effective data that we have coming off of different troubles with the COVID. So there's probably some clubs that used to have them that didn't have them, because it looks like this year we're actually going to have an uptick in youth events so far, but we don't have any final numbers on that as of right now, of course. And yeah, any clubs out there that are interested in it, you can always get in touch with our hunting ops department, and we can get one of your youth events scheduled for you. Like he said, we're waiving license and recording fees. And also, this doesn't count against the number of hunts you can have a year. So you can get an extra hunt or use one of the good days you have right now as a youth event and add one towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different venues to go on, just as long as your club's in good, your licensed event and your licensed club and your club's in good standing, then we will approve a YEP event for you.
Absolutely.
There's just a couple things I think that goes
and they're fun. Yeah. They're fun. Anybody doesn't enjoy taking the kids out, and it's just so much different than an adult cast, but they're fun.
Absolutely.
And just different things that kids come up with. It's a good time.
Absolutely. And for clubs putting it on, it's important to put the time and effort into it and not just use it as an extra event if that's what you have it for. I know some clubs are looking to capitalize on as many events they can, but it's important. A couple of good things go into having a good youth event.
Yeah, right? One thing I'd like to add about that, sometimes and you probably hear it as well, but, a club will say, well, we only have half a dozen kids around here that would even come to it, Yeah. Who cares?
Right.
That's 6 kids. Put them in the woods,
Yeah, plenty.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Especially if they bring their friend along or what have you.
You don't need to have 30, 40 entries to have a good youth hunt.
That's right.
You have a couple casts of kids, why do it?
That's right. I think the most important thing for clubs putting on events is to make it something worth the kids' while. There's so many things right now that kids could be doing otherwise on a weekend. You got to pull them away from different sporting activities, stuff in their house, video games, TV shows, movies, and stuff. So put a little effort into it, and I think you can make it worth the kids' while pretty quick, because they eat that kind of stuff up. Absolutely. They love being outdoors. It's natural instinct for them. But I think talking a little bit about the YEP program is an important aspect of it is the YEP classes that we require at each one. A club to take, no more, 15, 20 minutes talking about some different topics. And we have some topics on our website that I thought was pretty well thought out. There's probably something you did. Yeah, I talk about some of the registration basics, night hunt rules and handling basics, bench show rules, dog health and care is something that people probably don't talk about a lot, but I think it's always a big draw if you have a vet around that can come and speak to the kids a little bit about dog health and safety and maybe what to keep around.
Game laws, have your game wardens come out, a lot of different things.
That's right. And then the most important thing that you left for last, sportsmanship is a big part of that too, to push that. And then just to kind of tie up the youth programs, you talked about youth championships a little bit. Right now on our youth championship series schedule, there's 38 events on there. There's 8 breed championships, and there's 30 state youth championships. So there's ample opportunity for kids across the country to get involved. So if you're a parent listening, we plead to you to get the kids out, get them involved in the sport, because we need as many youngsters in the sport as we can get.
Yeah, and they'll have a good time.
All right, so we've kind of run down a couple of our youth programs already with the Spotlight Series and the YEP program, but now we're going to shift gears to our premier youth event in the year, and that's the UKC Youth Nationals. It's coming up here shortly, July 22nd, 23rd this year, and it's going to be in Medina, Ohio, at the Medina County Coon Club. You're familiar with that area, aren't you?
I am. That always brings back a lot of good memories for me. 2005 was my first full year working at UKC. I started in the fall of 2004. So that's the same place my first Youth Nationals was at Medina.
That's coon country, northern Ohio. You can't ask for any better hunting than that, right?
It's very good. It's as good as it gets right there. And they have a nice little club there. From what I remember, they had a pond out there. I don't know if you're going to have water races this year or not.
We do plan on that.
I think we actually had that year. We hired some. We allowed the kids to swim, I think, and we hired lifeguards. I think.
Yeah,
I think that was the place. And I bring that up. I don't know, man.
Been to a lot of them, haven't you?
Yeah,
20 of them. Anyways, but working closely with Larry Hawk there at the Medina County Coon Club. He's a former field rep, right? So
yeah,
he's been
and he would have been there that
really
first
good.
year. You know, another thing I remember about that is, and if you dig back in the archives, you'll see a lot of our kids will remember Daniel Patrick and his sister Samantha Patrick. They coon hunt, they squirrel hunt, but they're musicians.
No kidding.
And Daniel, I want to say, was 9 at the time, and his sister Samantha was 7, and their mom and dad also played, but we hired them to come out and play on that Friday night.
No kidding.
And they did an awesome job.
Yeah.
I still remember all that, but look at Daniel now and his sister. They're Nashville recording artists. That's crazy.
A good start.
Oh, yeah. You know, and those kids are still hunting, but always think of that.
Get in touch with them and get them out there this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I figured we'd go into a little bit of detail about Youth Nationals. Obviously, it's a 2-night hunt with a single bench show, non-licensed bench show on Saturday. So it usually gets started on Friday night. Let's have a 7 p.m. deadline, all Eastern Standard Time. Obviously, this is in the Eastern Time Zone, with a $10 entry fee and an hour and a half hunt. It gets a little warm in the summer, so I have seen it adjust in the past, but with it being in northern Ohio, I think we should be able to get that in, but it will be warm, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that's a 90-minute hunt, and I'll add to that a little bit. They used to be 2 hours, and that was a long time for some kids, especially, you know, you're talking in the middle of July. It's hot anywhere, oftentimes, and sometimes I've been to some Youth Nationals where it was ridiculously hot. I remember Tennessee.
Yeah.
It was really hot that year. But there, matter of fact, it was Tennessee where it was so hot, we changed it from 2 hours to 1 hour. I remember Alan and the guys there at the club, Alan Roberts, he came to me and he's like, man, what do you think about dangerously hot, you know? And we decided we would on Friday night. Well, the next morning I had a bunch of the young kids come up and, you know, if we'd had another hour, I would have won, you know, I needed that extra hour, you know, and this and that. But it was kind of funny the way it worked out. And and when we made the announcement before we called Cass out on Friday night, you know, I told him, I said, hey, let's do this 1 hour thing, and I'm willing to listen what your thoughts are tomorrow, see how this goes. And they did, and it was awesome. The next day, I set a time for us to discuss it, and you know, just see what kids thought about it. We wanted to hear from them, and they did an excellent job. And you know what? And the other thing I remember is the dads kind of sat back and they let their kids voice their opinions of what they thought.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's where the meeting in the middle of the road here that's where the 90-minute hunts came from for youth kids. It was because of that.
Ain't that something?
Yeah.
One of my good buddies down in Tennessee actually won that hunt, Wyatt Barnett.
Yeah.
I'll have to get a hold of him when we get off here. He never told me about the hour thing. He must have had a quick strike.
Oh, he's lucky. Year. He's probably lucky that it was an hour.
Yeah.
But the kid that plays second, he needed another hour.
He needed another hour. Yeah, that's right. So the format of the hunt.
But there's another kid, Wyatt Barnett. You know, he's a young adult. He's selling lights and things like that. I see him at some of these shows.
He does. He travels around with Hoop and Tater quite a bit. Yeah, he does. Yeah. Still in it now.
Good kid.
Last time I was over there at his kennel, he still had his trophy and everything from the Youth Nationals win. That's a big win.
Yeah, I remember that event well.
So onto the hunt format a little bit. We'll draw them out into 2 divisions. Doesn't matter what category the dog's in. Could be registered night champion or grand night.
Based on the kid's age.
On the kid's age. 5 to 12-year-olds will draw out together, and 13 to 17-year-olds are going to draw out together. And each night, Friday and Saturday night, we award 10 placements, 1st through 10th, regardless of age. That's just going to be based on score. And each of the placements is going to get a trophy and a Bright Eyes Light, right? Ray, another event that Ray with Bright Eyes Light sponsors. He's been doing it for as long as I've been here.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a good little while, you know. And every kid that that places, I do believe, in the top 10. Is it the top 10 that you award there?
That's
still?
right.
Okay, haven't made any changes to that, so they'll all get a light from Bright Eyes.
Yeah.
Good lights.
24 lights that weekend that
Yeah,
he donates.
Yeah. Going back to the age thing, is just this probably a good time to plug into that, to remind parents that any kid that is 13 or younger must be accompanied by an adult.
That's right.
Out on the cast. And that adult needs to be somebody outside of another parent or a guide or what have you that's in the cast.
Right. Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's important.
13 or younger needs to be accompanied by an adult.
Absolutely. Yeah, so going into Saturday, of course, we'll do our awards for the kids who won the night before during the day there. We have our bench show seminar at 11 a.m.
Saturday.
On Saturday.
Yeah.
That's right. And Tiffany Schmersel is going to be our judge this year. And I think she's going to do an awesome job. I'm going to be working with her a little bit in the next couple of weeks, getting a presentation ready, a kind of a PowerPoint presentation to talk to these kids that are interested in showing about some different details on handling techniques and things to worry about. And I think she's going to be real good at that.
Yeah, she will. Tiffany will be really good with that, and she'll be good working with the kids on that. And it's important that the kids be there for this, because I've seen where kids missed out on this meeting, because one of the things she's going to talk about is some of the things that she's going to be looking for. As I'm sure you'll get into it a little bit, it's not like your normal show where they're just judging dogs only. They're also judging the handling skills of the kids.
That's
so right. She'll be telling them some things that she'll be looking for, and they'll want to know what some of those items are to make sure that that they're aware of that. And that's also why it's not licensed, because it's not like a regular show. So it's more like almost like a 4-H type of show.
Not so focused on the appearance and structure of the dog as it is about the junior showmanship aspect to it and the handling skills of the kid and the effort they put into it. And basically what the information they retain from the seminar, that's right before the event. It
is. And I love the way that's set up. It's different than any other show because it's based on the classes. I'm hoping I'm not butting into your...
No, go for it. Yeah.
It's based on the kid's age. Yeah. So all the 6-year-olds are all going to be competing against other 6-year-olds. That's your class.
Yeah.
6-year-old class. Doesn't matter if they're hunting or showing what breed of dog, if it's a male or a female, if it's a champion, a grand, or a registered dog, all that doesn't matter. It's all about the kid's age. 6-year-olds show together, followed by 7-year-olds. And I think you do the first, second, third places in each.
That's right.
In each class, right?
That's right.
Okay.
First place in each age division is going to get a trophy this year. Second and third are going to get a ribbon of their choice.
You move right on up the age bracket. So 5 through 12, they'll show in the junior division. And then you'll have a junior division champion, and that is the age class winner of each one of those classes. And what is fun to watch here for these kids is how they progress, their handling skills progress. And you don't have to get up very far. 8, 9-year-olds, you would be surprised the handling skills you'll see.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I love about this whole format is that a kid who does their homework has an opportunity, because it's not everything about the dog. Yeah, you'll want a nice dog and things like that, but it's how you present the dog is a big part of the judging.
Right.
So I don't have to have the best dog. I just want to learn how to present it properly to the judge, and and that starts at home. Homework is key. But I can compete with what I have at home, and I don't need to worry about some kid that has the luxury of having, a world champion next door, or maybe what have you, to compete against that. It's a whole lot more than that.
And oftentimes you'll see some of the judges at this Youth Nationals event ask questions to the handlers about show rules, some stuff they talked about in the seminar, or some breed standards of their dog in particular.
Yeah, and this is some of these kids this year have an advantage maybe of hearing this that haven't been to a Youth Nationals in a while, and you're right. Now they'll do the same thing in the upper class or in the upper division, the senior division, where the 13 through 17, those classes. But you're right, when they come back oftentimes when they come back for the overall junior or senior division, that's when the judge is going to ask them some questions.
Yeah.
So it's good for them to read up on your breed standards, and they'll ask questions oftentimes about the breed that you're showing.
That's right.
So study the standard of that dog, and it's good.
And if you're competing in those senior division finals, those handlers are going to be tough. The ones that make it to the finals, And it's that the judges are going to have to be a little nitpicky, and some of these questions they're asking may have a bit of a sway on who they choose as the overall winner.
Absolutely does, and but it's awesome to watch that. I always love it, going back again to watch that progression as you get to the older kids. It's crazy good.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And the other thing is, they're only competing against, especially in their age classes or in their classes, they're only competing against other kids their age and their own skill set. I used to think, you mentioned Melinda Hicks. Back in the day, she won. She might have won the show there at Medina, in 2005. I don't remember. It was one of those shows that won. Yeah. So when she's up to 16, 17 years old, she's one of those that could compete with the adults at that age as well.
Right.
But, an 8, 9, 10-year-old can't compete with that.
Right.
So this setup, it really, really levels the playing field, and it's just a good setup.
That's a fun part of it is that a 6-year-old can get out there and compete against other 6-year-olds, feel comfortable in that setting, and still get an award for it and learn something along the way.
And this is, as at the time we're recording this, the first part of June, or the middle of June here. Now's the time to start getting ready for it.
Absolutely.
Start doing your homework.
Yeah. There you go.
Get your dog to gate good, gate well.
Yeah.
A lot of things set up well.
Yeah,
absolutely. And the other thing I'll bring up, I've seen already where a dog was acting up a little bit on the bench while they were up there showing. And guess what? The judge is not so much worried about the dog acting up as it is about how the kid is reacting to it, responding to this.
Yeah.
And I've seen one kid one time got some major points on the way she responded to a dog that wanted to kind of move around a little bit and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like you said, we have a little, but between the time this airs and the event happens, you probably have a little bit of time. Get out to a local bench show and talk to a judge. Do some prep beforehand. There's ample opportunities to kind of verse yourself in.
And that's a good point. There's plenty of you'll have somebody in your area that can give you some good pointers. Hey, what is a judge looking for? What should I work on here before Youth Nationals and things like that?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And also time to acclimate if you're showing a dog that maybe isn't the grand champion that's won autumn oaks, maybe you have some time to acclimate to different things, get it used to crowds, get it used to different surfaces that it's going to walk on, and get it used to being on a bench.
A lot of good points right there.
Yeah. So obviously the bench show seminar is going to be at 11 a.m. followed by the bench show at 1 p.m. In between there, we'll probably do our Spotlight Series awards, get those awards out. So it's a good time for everybody to be there in between that time. 1 p.m. deadline for the show, $10 entry fee. We've talked a lot about the format and how the show works. So after the show, we're going to move into kind of the dead period of the day. It's hot in the summer, but there will be some activities around it. There always seems to be some activities that the host club puts on between the 1 o'clock bench show and the 7 p.m. deadline for the hunt. I know Larry was telling me that they are actively working on getting the pond ready for water race that weekend, so that's going to be fun to watch. But there could be last year there was a lot of there was a cornhole tournament, and also they had a BB shooting contest tournament. Adult supervised, of course, but that was fun to watch. And there's always, I think they said they allow fishing in the pond and different things. So
they did the year we were there.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun day. Saturday's the fun long day for kids. So if they're coming to show, there's a lot of stuff to do all day long.
Yeah.
Let's see. So 7 o'clock deadline, $10 entry fee, and that again, it's an hour and a half hunt right now. So let's get into the hunt and how you win this thing if you're a junior or in the senior division. One change we made for the junior division this year is we used to do a Final Four for the junior division, and they're 5 to 12 years old. Sometimes you get some youngsters in there, and oftentimes that's 2 long days. It's hot. You've hunted 3 hours total over 2 nights. They played all day long on Saturday. That late round was rough on them. So we've kind of did away with the late round on Saturday night for the junior division.
Yeah. So the way it works for the Final Four would be the scores after 2 nights, right?
Right.
That's still the way it is.
That's right. Double cast winners.
Yeah.
Be the first hit.
Yeah. So for those younger kids, that's asking a whole lot. Yeah. So we're doing away with that this year, and that's probably a good move. So that'll just be based on combined scores for 2 nights, right?
That's right. The overall winner will be the highest combined double cast winner, and if we don't have any double cast winners, it'll be a single night.
Now you're talking about the junior national title.
That's junior division only.
Yeah,
and the winner of that is actually going to bring home $1,000 scholarship along with their national championship trophy and an embroidered jacket. So but that's just for junior division only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah. I think it's going to work out really well because there's last year we were in Miami, Oklahoma, and the unbeknownst to us on the way there, the building was under renovation. We couldn't get in. We were just under a pavilion all weekend. Couldn't really escape from the heat unless you got in, went to your hotel or something. And we had one young girl. She couldn't have been 7 or 8 years old there on Saturday night, who had double cast winds, and she was a trooper, but you could tell she did not want to go out on a late night cast. And I don't think any of them were too amped up to go out on it, but that's tough on them.
I probably wouldn't have wanted to either.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But for the senior division, we still will have a Final Four. And like you said, double cast winners, combined score will be the first to advance. And if we don't have 4, which we usually do, then single cast high score would advance you through. But you do have to complete hunt times both nights.
To be eligible.
That's right. To be eligible, you have to hunt both nights.
Yeah, and complete the whole 2 hours to be eligible. Can't withdraw on Friday.
Minutes, right.
Or 90 minutes. Yeah, can't withdraw at an hour on Friday. That takes you an opportunity out.
Or scratch.
Yeah,
different.
Yeah, that removes your opportunity of getting in the Final Four.
That's right. And there's actually going to be $9,000 in scholarship money paid out to the Final Four. And I'll give you the breakdown here real quick. 2nd through 4th place all have the same award. They're going to get a plaque for making it to the final cast of the Youth Nationals, and they're also going to get $2,000 in youth scholarship money to use whenever they graduate high school and move on to the next level.
That's awesome.
And first place is going to get their national championship trophy, an embroidered jacket, and $3,000 in scholarship money to use towards their next level of education.
That totals $10,000 in total, and they need to use that right after high school, right? That's when they're eligible for it.
That's right. That's right.
So we don't you're not actually going to write them a check on the day of.
That's right. What oftentimes happens is once they graduate high school, they'll go to college the next year. They'll email us in an invoice from the office there, the administrative office there at the university or tech school or wherever they decide to go to, and we'll send the check directly to them to help them pay for some money. I actually just did it this past year for Drew Estep over in West Virginia. He had talking to his dad. He had his first year of college paid for from his winnings from Youth Nationals.
Wow, that's awesome. We have several kids that have won, that have earned scholarships in multiple years, and that helps them a lot.
Absolutely. A couple like Drake Chastain's coming up soon, right? He should have a little bit of money saved up for him.
Yeah. And they don't have to use everything yet in one amount. It can be broke down whatever invoices they do send us.
Absolutely. One little wrinkle that we've added this year is what we're going to call the Total Junior Award. And it's going to be for any youth achieving a cast win in either night of the night hunt and then also placing in the top 3 in their age division of the bench show. And it's just here at UKC, we emphasize a total dog, right? A dog that's correct in conformation. It's a good-looking dog, but it also competes at the highest level. And these youth are embodying everything that means to us. The total dog embodies for us.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing I haven't heard you mention was you mentioned the Final Fours in each category, junior division and the senior division, but they also you have a top 10 placement overall for each night,
right? And
that is the juniors and the seniors combined, correct?
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that happens on both nights. So
that's right. And they beat a trophy and a Bright Eyes Light, right? Mm-hmm. So it's 20 total lights being handed out by Ray that weekend for that, plus the 4 for the Spotlight Series. So we will do a top 10 placements each night for those.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed talking about the youth programs a little bit, but I think one thing that we really wanted to accomplish with this podcast and web series is to talk about rules and the interpretations that come with them a little bit. And before we can dive into any rules, I think we need to touch on the questioning procedure because that's a huge part of rules and getting calls right in the woods.
Good idea. I like it. Yep.
Right. So what I've built out up here on our cheat sheets is going through different steps that you would take in the woods. But first thing I have is a pre-step, and I think it's important for any event official and host clubs to know right now.
I bet I know exactly where you're going with it. Selecting judges.
Selecting quality, trustworthy judges. Don't just draw out a cast and, I don't know this guy, but I've never had trouble with him, so let's make him the judge. pick a quality judge from your pool and assign them to a cast, and make sure that you have a good judge
Trevor,
on each
I needed
cast.
to shut my phone off before we started this.
They probably have a question right there that can follow the questioning procedures correctly. But yes, like you said, picking quality judges is our pre-step before any question. If you have a good judge on a cast, then oftentimes it keeps you away from having trouble in the woods.
Absolutely does. Absolutely. There's so much value there. And here's the other thing. I get a lot of times I hear, well, we got to get the scorecards in the young guy's hand. They need to learn sometime. I agree 100%. But don't do it and intimidate somebody before they're ready. And there's nobody for them to learn from than a good, experienced, solid judge.
Absolutely. And there's so many examples in this rule book right here of calls that are made off of a judgment call, basically. And when you have a judge with sound judgment, then that takes away a lot of the trouble that you can run into.
Yeah, I don't know if you have it in here or not, but I think it's this is a good spot to hit on the proper way to select your judges. It is not hard. I remember back in the day when it was frustrating. You'd draw out. They'd call 4 guys. You'd go up there, and oftentimes, believe it or not, there'd be somebody reaching for the card.
Yeah.
And guess what? A lot of times they got the card.
Yeah.
And it used to frustrate me that they allowed that to happen, because oftentimes it was a guy that he had motives,
Right. I know we've talked about it some. You dislike when somebody says, "Oh, I can judge." Well, we'll assign the judges.
Yeah, it's kind of a red flag. Okay, yeah. But anyways, the proper way to do that, and it is not hard. We get it all the time. Well, that just takes too much time. No, it does not. If you're taking your entries, you have let's just use easy math. Let's say you have 12 dogs. That's going to be 3 casts, 3 4-dog casts. All we need is 3 judges. Go through your entries here. Get the 3 judges you're comfortable with, that you want to use, 3 best guys or 3 good solid judges out of that pool. Put them over here on a separate pile. And the next thing, if any one of these guys are guiding, that's fine. Mark them as guides or what have you. You can stamp these guys, put them on your scorecard right away.
Right.
Now you've got A, B, and C on 3 cards here. And now you've got 3 solid judges on each card. If they still need, if any of these casts still need a guide, you pull from your guide entries and draw those, flip those over, draw them on it, and then after that, the rest of your entries. If you do that, it will benefit you tremendously. You're not always going to eliminate everything. And we're not ever suggesting that questions are a bad thing.
Right.
They're there for a reason. There's procedures there for a reason, and for good reason. And that reason is, the intent is so we do get it right.
Get the call right.
It absolutely, but it absolutely helps tremendously getting it right from the start. Right. And that is use the best judges you have available. That's right. Going to help you a whole lot. Not only, sometimes when there is a question in the field or in the woods, in this case, is a lot of your better experienced judges will be able to explain the situation and what the rule is. So many times today, we fail to do one thing, and that is flip that scorecard over and show them what the rule is.
That's right.
You just want to want to debate about what it is or should be. Turn that scorecard over. We don't see that enough.
Once you point it out to them, they usually remember that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get into the 1, 2, 3s and the ABCs going through the question procedure, I made a couple quick notes at the top here. And the first thing is pointed out right on our Master Hounds and Hunt Director checklist, and one of the most important rules in our entire rule book, and that's Rule 14B, that tells you that situations not questioned and notated at the time the judge's decision is made will not be considered. I guess the first step of the questioning procedure is making sure you have a question. So make sure that if something arises in the woods, be sure you question it at the time it happens, and be sure it's notated on the card. And the judge doesn't have the power to say no question. If you have a question, they have to put the question mark on the card. That's their job.
It is, absolutely is.
Right. And
it's an imperative to question it right away. Don't if you don't agree with the way a tree is scored or what have you, and before you walk away, Here again, this is where good judges come in. They will let you know they'll let the cast know how a tree is scored. Sure. And not everybody does. There's not a rule that says they have to, but the good judges will, but, and if they don't, if you have a judge that doesn't, and you don't know how the tree is being scored, make sure you know before you walk away from him. It's not that hard to find out. Yep. Most of the casts you're going to be on are going to have a hunting judge, so it's going to be a voting procedure unless majority sees the coon, or sees the raccoon. Let's say you don't see the raccoon, you're going to decide on how this tree is going to get scored. Other two options are going to be minus or circle. So that's going to require a vote,
right?
So yeah.
Yeah. And the reason that that's so important, and it's in the Master of Hounds checklist to read before a hunt, is that us, UKC, and the host club and the event officials, we're all bound by the same rules and procedures out in this rule book. We can't go outside of these rules and procedures.
It is. And another way you're going to eliminate a lot of your questions and issues is when we talk about this voting on scoring a tree, what have you. Vote the way it should be. Vote. Score dogs. Yep. Score dogs. If you're using this opportunity, if you and I are buddies and we're trying to help each other here, guess what? It takes too long to create a good reputation. It doesn't take long at all to ruin a good reputation, and it can happen in these night hunts. Score dogs. If it's a slick tree, vote to minus it. Whether your dog has first tree or doesn't matter where it treed on, whatever, get it right. And if you do that, I think you're going to gain so much respect, and it also eliminates a lot of issues throughout. It sets the standard for hunts.
That's right.
It's just score dogs. That's what we're out here for.
Absolutely. That's right.
Don't vote to necessarily just to benefit whatever benefits yourself. That's not the intent of it.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And one other thing that's pointed out in the Master Hounds checklist that may be important for people to make note of is that when questions arise in the woods, unless it's a scratching offense, you complete your hunt and bring it back to the official to get sorted out after the hunt's over. If it's a scratching offense, that's whenever you'd call a halt and take it back for a resolution right away.
Yeah.
Before you can continue on the hunt.
Right.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. Step one, first thing you got to do if a question arises in the woods, and you talked about it already, is cast vote.
Ask for a vote. Just guys just talking about it, discussing it or whatever is not necessarily a vote. If you don't agree with it the way it's being scored, ask for a vote. And that's as simple as, hey, judge, I want to ask for a vote here.
That's right.
And the judge that's his job to, and if there is any question, if they may have somebody that is a little green, doesn't know what to do or whatever, here again, that's where a good judge comes in. There's not a rule for it, but that's where a good judge will say, okay, stop guys, this guy's questioning, we got to vote.
Right.
I can't just put a question on it. We got to do step one. We got to vote on it first.
Yep. And any good Master of Hounds, if you hear them come back to the clubhouse, that's the first thing they're going to ask is, well, how did everybody vote?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you alluded to it earlier a little bit, I believe, is that each handler must vote if you look at Rule 14B, or the dog will be scratched from the hunt.
That's true. Now there's a good point. Let's insert something here. I don't know if you have notes on it or not, but let's say you have a situation you don't know how to vote. You don't really have an opinion.
Right. Or
you don't know how to vote. Should I vote in favor of a dog or in favor of a handler, or what should I do? I don't really have an opinion here. I could go either way. This is the one thing I always suggest, okay? And it goes back to selecting those judges.
Yep.
You should trust, the club selected them for a reason here, that they trust their integrity,
right?
Knowing the rules, this and that. Unless you see something that you absolutely don't agree with the way the judge is ruling on it, why are you voting against the judge the way the judge ruled on it? It's something to think about. If you're on the fence with it, why? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
I use that quite a bit, and I think it's a good way to look at it.
It is, yeah. And
or if you didn't see it, sometimes you're asked to vote on something that you didn't see. Dog fights is one of them. You had a dog fight before you got in there, or somebody saw it, but you just didn't. Why are you voting against the judge if you have no good reason to?
Yeah. And if you take it to a cast vote, then in most all instances in our rule book, it takes a majority of the cast to overrule the judge's call.
Right?
There's a couple instances where it doesn't. Right, it was the scoring a tree, and also the new babbling rule that was implemented in 2019.
Yeah.
At that time, you can.
Yep.
So there's a couple instances, but in most cases, it's going to take, and oftentimes it's going to take outvoting and a majority of the cast to outvote the judge to overturn his rule.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you've taken your cast vote, and if you're not satisfied with how the cast vote turns out, then at that time you're going to ask for a question to be put on the card to take back to the master hounds.
Easy, simple.
Yep.
Arguing is not the rules. Doesn't say, "Hey, stop and argue about it with everybody." No, ask for a question. That's simple.
Does it say to Facebook message Alan?
No, it does not.
Okay, just put a question on the card and take it back to the event official.
Just ask to put a question
Simple
on the scorecard. And
don't have to argue.
And here again, the judge has he has to put a question mark, regardless of how frivolous he thinks it is. Put a question mark on the scorecard.
Right. Let the event official sort it out. You're doing your job. Just put the question mark.
And
here
again, they do make mistakes sometimes. Right. Judgment calls are judgment calls, but sometimes they do get it wrong, and that's what it's for.
Right. And it's not entirely uncommon for me to read a rule in here and you to read a rule and have two different interpretations. Yeah. That's what it's there for. Question it and get the correct interpretation and get it sorted out.
And here again, too often, it becomes something it should not. They want to argue about it instead of just following these procedures. Here again is where that good judge comes in, doesn't allow that to happen.
Absolutely. So one thing we're not going to expound on too much today, but it is important to note here a little bit is the two different formats that we have in place, the Master of Hounds format and the Hunt Director format, because it has a bearing on this next step that we take. Mm-hmm. So step 2 I have here after a cast vote is to bring the question back to the Master of Hounds. Obviously, that's only in a Master of Hounds format. When you get back to the club, you're turning in the scorecard. You're going to tell the Master of Hounds we have a question, and you're going to attempt to resolve it with the Master of Hounds, the judge, and the members of the cast, right?
Mm-hmm. And if you have a question, you're obligated, even if you didn't win the cast, you're obligated to go back.
That's right. That's right. And then the Master of Hounds will hear everyone's side of the story, get all the information they can, and make the decision with the information they have available to them.
That's right.
One note it has in the rule book is that no complaints will be considered by the Master of Hounds after a period of 30 minutes has elapsed from the time the scorecard has been turned in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing to keep in note to get back there with the card. So moving on to step 3, that was a pretty simple step there, but moving on to step 3, which is also the next step in a Hunt Director format because we skipped the Master of Hounds step, but would be if you're not satisfied with the Master of Hounds ruling, you can request a panel to be formed.
Yeah, and you do that right after the Master of Hounds made his ruling. Now there's where it's gonna cost you a fee, and it's a $10 fee,
right?
And it's not about the money; it's just to eliminate the frivolous ones. And you know what? You should before you do that. Always encourage guys, make sure you have a legitimate question. And a lot of that has to with the rules.
Right.
Rule book.
Yep.
Rule book. Have something that you can back your complaint on.
Right.
Your argument on it. Yep. Something within the rules. Don't use it just to try every avenue you can. That's not the intent of it. But
absolutely.
And if you do, absolutely. That's what it's there for, to get it right.
That's right. And so a panel that's comprised of either the Master of Hounds or Hunt Director forming a 3-person panel of responsible, impartial individuals. That's what it calls out in the rule book. You have somebody with no skin in the game, should you say, but also has a little bit of a bearing on the rules in the rule book.
100%. And it'll tell you the qualifications in the rule book for a panel.
Right. And so you mentioned the $10 fee after the panel hears all sides, comes to their conclusion and makes their decision. Then we'll figure out what happens with that $10. If they rule with the side of the handler with the question, then he's going to actually get his fee back.
Correct.
And if he doesn't, then the host club retains that $10 for the trouble of putting together the panel fee.
Correct.
Immediately after the panel's done, if the next step, if you disagree with the panel's decision, you have the ability to appeal it to UKC after that. And you have to do that while the panel's still assembled because it's going to take some paperwork filled out by members of the panel, the Master of Hounds, Hunt Director, and also the members.
Yeah, and this is important. If you noted what Trevor has just said there, is that it needs to be done while the panel is still assembled.
Right.
So the way it's going to work, the panel's going to sit here at a table with the cast, the 4 handlers or however many there are with the 3 panel members. They make their decision. They render their decision. If I don't agree with it, right at that point, I should say thank you, but I would like to exercise my next step, and that goes for anybody that doesn't agree with their decision. and I want to appeal your decision. Now it's going to cost you $20. Is it $20? $20. And they will give you the form. You fill out the form. Part of the reason for this is to get so UKC now has all their information that they need, what the scenario is, what the question is, how the panel ruled, and who the panel members are and their contact numbers. So the reason for that is so they send that in with their event report to UKC to make the final decision on it. But then we have everything here documented that we can contact everybody. It does not work. Once you leave the table, you go outside, your buddy says, boy, you should have done the appeal, Come on, Trevor, you need to go back in and do it. No, you don't need to be influenced. That's not what it's about. Right. Just don't let anybody influence you that wasn't directly involved. All that does is muddies the waters.
And we've
alluded
to it a little bit already a couple of times when talking about this procedure. There's a civil way to do it. If you just don't agree with someone's opinion on the rule interpretation, then move to the next step and do it respectfully and don't cause a big scene. It doesn't have to be that. People disagree.
That's where they make the biggest mistake, is want to argue about it. Just follow the procedures that are already there. Yeah. It's not rocket science. We can all do it.
That's right. So like you said, $20 appeal fee. Once it gets to us, we'll take the information that we've gathered. It comes in with our hunt report. They'll send it in with the event report.
You're talking about the fee.
And the appeal form.
Yep.
And we'll have all the information there. We'll go through all the panel stuff, do our investigation, and after that's over with, if we decide to rule in the favor of the handler, we'll actually give you your $20 back. Otherwise,
correct.
It's kept with us. Yeah. And then I think we send out an official letter with our ruling to all the members involved, and letting them know what our conclusion was. It's a really simple process in black and white if you break it down and just read it.
Correct. Right. It is, and it's in the rule book, and it's actually on the back of the scorecard. You can't miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just real quick, just to hit on it, non-hunting judge cast. If you have a non-hunting judge on the cast, it's eerily similar to this. Besides the cast vote, right?
It's the only thing is eliminated is the cast vote.
Right,
it goes directly to a question or not.
That's right.
Everything
else
cast
is the votes. Same. Can overturn the non-hunting judge's rule in the field. You question it, bring it back, and then you go through these exact same procedures, unless it's a major event where there's no panel or appeal process. Correct. Like a world championship or tournament of champions. Yeah, so I hope everybody kind of takes the question procedure into consideration, because like we mentioned, our hands are bound by the same rules and procedures there are. So if you don't follow those right procedures, then we can't help you.
Yeah, and that's important. They're there for a reason. The procedures are there for a reason. And I've had it over the years. I've had it, and I've had to disappoint guys, in the appeal procedure when I found that they didn't vote.
Right.
Or they didn't request an appeal, when the panel was still assembled. They might have waited 20 minutes, went outside and talked to their buddies. Yeah. And you know what? I may have been in favor of them being correct. Yeah. Guess what? All that doesn't matter. And I always tell them, our hands are bound by the same rules that there are, and they're in there for a reason. Yep. And there's timelines like that for good reason.
Right.
Otherwise, things get too muddy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that was good to talk about the question procedure before we ever get into any rule interpretations. But I think in the coming weeks, in our next Coonhound episodes that you see released, we'll probably talk about some rules out there that are hot button issues that I think we need to go into depth on, such as treeing but not declared treed versus Rule 5B, dog coming in after the judge arrives.
5B.
Stay tuned for that one, because that's one that is missed often but talked about quite a bit. So that we'll knock that. We'll give them an interpretation and knock out all the theories on that one and give them the correct one.
If you're like me, I love good rules discussions. I love talking about rules.
And we're going to take advantage of this platform and really do that over the next few months. You're going to see a lot of rule stuff.
Yeah, and hopefully it will help the sport, being able to listen to some of this stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to go more in depth than you might when you're writing about things, and hopefully it'll be good. And I think it will be. Yeah,
absolutely. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and hopefully you stay tuned for some of our future episodes. Thanks for listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and to like and follow UKC Hunting Ops on Facebook and Instagram.